Welcome back to the Family Ties podcast. This is Julia Avery and my wonderful sister and co-host.
Oh, gee, thanks. This is Kelley, the Battle Maiden here. How's it going, everybody? We made it through another week.
Yeah.
Woo! Julia, what have you been doing this week?
I've been working. I have a job. I've been working a lot. And trying not to be discouraged about it. I have put out my grievances out into the universe, and now I feel like I can open up to a little bit more of gratitude for having a job. I feel like you have to like it. There's a balance. It's like yin and yang. You can't have those grievances on your heart and accept gratitude. You got to get it out, put something back in. Mm-hmm. So I got it out.
Yeah. That's important. And like we talked about the other day, sometimes it's best to vent to someone who, knows you and loves you. That way you can put it all in perspective and then go face the people you really wanted to say it to. It sometimes helps, sometimes doesn't. So, yeah. All right, guys, we are going to introduce you all to a new topic. Today, we're going to be talking about science, but before I get into that, I'm going to begin with two do-yourself-a-favor suggestions, okay? All right, we're doing this, top of the hour here. So I watched yesterday this new Netflix kind of documentary called My Octopus Teacher, and I've made a list of like 20 things that I want to see that are coming out like between now and like late fall. So I watched it. It is basically fantastic in every way. But My Octopus Teacher takes viewers into a world few humans have ever seen. So in 2010, debilitated by adrenal fatigue, Craig began freediving in a freezing underwater forest at the tip of Africa. As the icy water re-energized him, he started to film his experiences. Wow, I can't speak today. And in time, a curious young octopus captured his attention. By visiting her den and tracking her movements every day for months, he won the animal's trust and they developed an unlikely friendship. So as the little octopus shared this... Huh?
Sorry, I love the way that sounds because it sounds really creepy. By visiting her den and tracking her movements every day for months, they won their trust. Really?
Or was she just terrified and got used to you? No.
Right.
As the little octopus shared the secrets of her world, Craig became first witness to the beauty and drama of a wild creature's life, and in the process underwent an incredible mental and physical transformation. I cried a lot.
Aww.
And Thomas was like, "Why are you? Oh, you're crying? That's so sad." And I was like, "Ugh."
That's so sweet.
It's so good and it's gorgeous. So do yourself a favor and then go watch The Social Dilemma, also on Netflix. And both of these descriptions I got from Wikipedia. So thank you, Wikipedia. But it's a 2020 docudrama directed by Jeff Orlowski. And let's see here. It explores the rise of social media and the damage it has caused to society, focusing on its exploitation of its users for financial gain through surveillance capitalism and data mining. How its design is meant to nurture an addiction, its use in politics, its impact on mental health, including the mental health of adolescents and rising teen suicide rates, and its role in spreading conspiracy theories and aiding groups such as flat earthers and white supremacists. The film, it's so thought-provoking, guys. It features interviews with former Google design ethicist and Center for Humane Technology co-founder Tristan Harris, his fellow Center for Humane Technology co-founder Asa Raskin, Asana co-founder and Facebook's Like Button co-creator Justin Rosenstein, Harvard University professor Shoshana Zuboff, former Pinterest president Tim Kendall, Al now director of policy research Rashida Richardson, and like so many people. They keep going. So the interviews are cut together with dramatizations starring some actors which tell the story of a teenager's social media addiction. I would say that that part, even though I love the guy Skylar Gisando, he's that really sweet guy on Booksmart. The one who is rich and he has the car, Julia. He's like,
I still need to see that movie.
oh, anyways, I like him, but I wish they had done it without the dramatization. I could have done without that.
Okay.
But I think it's fantastic. And, you know, I would love to hear what you would think of it, Julia. I think you'd love it.
Yeah, that's on my list.
What's your do yourself a favor?
What I've caught up with, well, it would be a repeat of what you told people to do themselves a favor with last week. Last time I watched Lovecraft Country. A new episode comes out today, right?
Today. Let's do it.
Yes, it is amazing. It's like multiple different influences came in, had a beautiful fuck session, and created this amazing baby.
Yeah.
I'd say elements of American Horror Story, stylistic elements of Indiana Jones, but not like Indiana Jonesy, but like stylistic elements. I feel like that have come together. Get Out, when they were at that mansion, Kelley, I was getting strong Get Out feels.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh,
don't go inside.
Don't do it. Yeah, it's got a lot of cool influences, and the acting is phenomenal. The story is just so exciting, and it's got so many social very timely social awareness issues within a period piece, which is so amazing. And I am just so into it.
You got a period piece with sci-fi, with action, with drama, with horror, suspense, some humor, and a lot of great music.
Oh yeah. I freaking love it. Another thing, let's see here. I started Raised by Wolves.
Yes.
And so I've caught up with that too. And it's like nothing I've ever seen before.
I love it.
It's like an unsettling, but very like forward thinking.
When mother loses her temper. Oof.
Oh.
Guys, it's real good. Ridley Scott, of course, you know, he's amazing. I think it's his son has directed the past few or past two. So it's another Scott, and it runs the family because Ridley Scott's brother did Blade Runner
by the company Scott Free. I feel like it's by the Scotts.
Duh. Nice. That's a good tie-in, Julia. Love it.
Hey.
Hey-o. But yeah, I mean, it's a family affair, obviously, but I forgot what Ridley's brother's name was, and he directed the original Blade Runner, which was so incredibly ahead of its time. So, all right. Wrapping up.
I want to talk about that show at length sometime once we've watched all of the episodes.
I know.
Whenever they all come out. Because
I like challenge there a lot.
Yes. I love the concepts of how they tie the religious aspect into end of days, into like preserving humanity and empathy and technology, all of that kind of tied into a whole conversation. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So guys, we'll revisit that. But we're going to go ahead now and get into today's first installment of Science versus Faith. So this is going to be another one of those recurring topics that we'll title the Science versus Faith. So Julie and I want to share with you what our personal relationship has been with science and how we have, no pun intended, evolved. Today's installment. Do you like that? Thanks.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, thanks. Today's installment will be focused around what we were initially taught, how it formed our worldview, and our current thoughts on this mode of thinking by the religious right and the homeschooling movement we were raised within. So, diving into the past, We were raised to deny any science that did not fit into a strict biblical narrative. Basically, anything that was not kind of explicitly listed in the Bible, we could not believe. So we were fed a watered down and creation-based version of science. Our mom donated to fund the building of the Creation Museum that, you know, has the ark, and it is all about, you know, how creationism is how, and our earth is young, all these different things we were raised upon. We went to all of the conferences in our area put on by Answers in Genesis, who built the ark and the Creation Museum. And Mom bought like every single book that they, you know, were selling at the conventions. And for a brief period of time, you all, yours truly was a pen pal with Ken Hamm, one of the founders of Answers in Genesis, who a few years back got his ass royally handed to him in a debate with Bill Nye. So, you know, everything comes full circle.
I want to watch that or listen to it, whatever
Julia,
it is.
Julia, do yourself a favor and go watch it. It's so good. You just have to shake your head. But as a kid, like, we bought into it hook, line, and sinker. So one other thing before I let Julia tell you exactly what the Creation Museum is all about. Apparently, Answers in Genesis has now expanded. Like, their books used to be more or less kind of all over the place by different authors and things, but now they have their own homeschool curriculum. And that is terrifying to me, seeing as it tells us.
I don't see where half the information they get actually comes from the book.
You know what their answer to that is were you there? That's Ken Hamm. He's
they
like,
want either.
No, exactly. But, you know, it's all about believing the Bible as the ultimate.
But the stuff they're saying is what I'm saying. The stuff that they're saying is from the Bible. I don't even get. Like, they're pulling all of these details out of thin air and saying it's out of Genesis, and it's not that detailed.
Well, here's the thing: is everything that they base. Well, everything they base their belief on it comes from Genesis, the book of Genesis. And it's basically trying to push the fact that they believe that the word of God is completely infallible, and that is the ultimate, and that basically we have an earth that is a few thousand years old, and dinosaurs walked the earth with humans when right as the flood was about to begin, and then the flood kind of wiped out so many, you know, dinosaurs and stuff like that. Like, some of them did survive, but not for long. But the whole idea of an ark, to me as an adult, is ludicrous. Every creature on the planet gathered together in an ark. And I mean, we're talking about bugs, we're talking about birds, we're talking about all these mammals. I mean, how are you going to feed all these animals for as long as they were in this ark? Years. Anyways, go ahead, Julia, tell us about this esteemed museum. Why is it so great?
Okay. The Creation Museum shows why God's infallible word, rather than man's faulty assumptions, is the place to begin if we want to make sense of our world. This 75,000 square foot facility allows families to experience Earth history as God has revealed it in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly 150 exhibits feature fearsome animatronic dinosaurs talking heroes of the faith, and professional displays that honor God's word. The museum also boasts a fun-filled 200-seat special effects theater, a state-of-the-art planetarium. I did like that. That was the only thing.
Oh, you went?
Yes, Kelley.
Julie? Mm-hmm. What?
A petting zoo, nature trails, and lots more. Yes, I went.
Oh my God, finish this and then I want to hear. I want to hear all about it.
That's why I'm laughing. Like, this is hilarious.
Oh my God, Julia, tell us.
I was embarrassed to be there. Okay, at the heart of the Creation Museum is a chronological retelling of biblical history in 7 parts called the 7 Seas. Yes. Guests step back in time, beginning with creation and fast forward to Christ's return. Along the way, they see how God's word provides the big picture answers for our most difficult questions, whether about science, the Bible, or our personal relationship with God. The Creation Museum is a Christian evangelistic. I'll fuck it up. I'll fuck up the pronunciation of that, and I don't care. Evangelistic outreach events is in Genesis, as is our sister attraction, the Ark Encounter.
God, there's more.
But wait, there's more. No, I never saw the Ark though. The Ark wasn't finished. When I was there. It was in progress.
I'm sure they had more people working on it today than Noah had, so it had to come together a lot faster. It better be anatomically correct.
The idea that there's scientists involved with these beliefs is laughable.
Yes.
Okay, the Creation Museum is a Christian evangelistic outreach of answers in Genesis as a blah, blah, blah. Okay, I already said that. I guess I wanted to fuck up the word evangelistic. Anyway, located 40 miles from the museum in Williamstown, Kentucky, the Ark Encounter brings to life the Ark of Noah's day and equips visitors to understand the reality of the events recorded in the book of Genesis. How did an Australian end up in Kentucky?
Well, Julia, that's a story for another time.
Ken Hamm, that sounds like a midlife crisis to me.
So, anyways, before we get into that, tell us about your trip to the museum, Julie.
It was very empty. And we were like some of the only people there, and you could tell they poured money into this. A lot of money into this, and I was just shocked at the amount of money that came together for that, when like that money could have gone towards the poor, helping the poor. Like the Christian ideal was just so pathetic right there, just being like, sure, this is awesome for you guys, but like your mission as Christians, you've seriously misused millions and millions of dollars that came together to make this shit show happen.
So, did you learn anything new?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I don't know how that muted itself. You know how my computer is spazzing out and clicking random things?
Yes.
It's muted me. My computer doesn't like what I'm saying.
Like, shut her up.
Man, I'm offending my computer. Are you a believer?
You're a poor computer.
It just maximized the Zoom screen. Stop it. It's terrifying. I feel like I'm really like speaking with a spirit or something.
Ooh, you hit a nerve.
I did.
Well, I had asked you if you'd learned anything new, and then you went silent. So I'm assuming that means no.
Yes and no. No, biblically. The planetarium was really cool experience. It was like state of the art, and it was so exciting because I love the solar system. And of course, like the whole narrative for the course was like, for like the whole show was to like, hold on, exit full screen, there we go, was to like put it in a biblical sense. But it was really cool the way, like, I never knew that the galaxies were all fanned out, and like we're like literally a speck here, like it's like literally a fan. When they zoomed out, here's a galaxy, here's a galaxy, here's a galaxy, here's a galaxy, and it's like somebody spread open a fan and every line is a galaxy, and we're like one of these random ones, and they're just like you can't even like, it's so minuscule, and that to me like really sold the fact that how can we like even try to pretend like we're special, like we're the only ones out of all of this. It's ridiculous. I'm not
I don't
saying
know how they explain planets, stars, or anything that's related to the galaxy or universes in any way that makes any sense, because every fact about planets, stars, and all these things and their life cycles and how old they are goes against everything that they try and teach. So how do they even broach that subject? They're just like, here's stars. God made them. Aren't they beautiful? You're like,
well, the way they deflect stuff is, well, God created the concept of time. And we were his special creation. It could have come after other duds. But the whole thing is like always going back to, well, God has always been. And then you're like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And it just seems like that's they deflect, all of their arguments deflect in other areas to try to like do the power overshadow statements to just distract you from what you were asking, to try to like a showstopper. He's always been. And you're like, well, what about, how do you like, they're so off topics to take this. Like,
how could they even explain a meteor shower? That's my question. Is how they can even begin to explain that with a biblical slant. Okay, guys. All right. So we're getting off on a tangent there. So basically, we were indoctrinated very early on. Go ahead, Julie.
Yes.
Okay.
That was it. I was just,
Okay. She was agreeing. So basically, when we give you that intro, just think about that as being our worldview up until the point in which I left home. I'm not kidding you. Until I went to college, this is what I bought into, hook, line, and sinker, because I wasn't given any other perspective of the world. So when we discuss science in religious sectors of homeschooling, which has tended to be the vast majority of homeschoolers, even today, these discussions within the groups sound like this snippet from BioLogos, a blog for religious homeschoolers. And they're trying to discuss science in both religious and secular curriculum. She says, people on the homeschool forum often ask me what science textbooks I recommend. There are some great options by Christian publishers in some subjects, but many are plagued by weak or outdated science and explicitly promote young earth or intelligent design perspectives. In general, books by secular publishers have a lot of advantages. The good ones are updated every couple of years, so they are reasonably current with respect to science and pedagogical practices. Also, at least theoretically, they are supposed to be silent on matters of faith. So Christian teachers and parents have more freedom to contextualize the science with Christian teaching. So basically, parents and teachers are free to pepper in more Christian ideology and worldviews. But not all secular science textbooks are created equal, and some can be pretty vocal about promoting an anti-faith perspective. Why do they need to promote any kind of faith perspective is my question.
Right. It doesn't feel like it's relevant at all.
But because of this fact, some parents and Christian educators express concern when they're faced with the prospect of using a secular textbook for a science course. They worry that an atheistic bias in these textbooks could harm students whose Christian worldview is still developing. It's like,
you mean while you're trying to brainwash them, you are terrified that any other thing could possibly have them think for themselves.
Yes.
You are terrified.
So the whole point of this is to arm parents with the tools to keep their kids from hearing anything that does not involve.
That's the exact definition of brainwashing, folks.
Yeah.
That's brainwashing.
So below, she's gonna point out some things, and she says, here we consider these common types of bias that sometimes, 3 common types of bias that sometimes crop up in secular science textbooks, and some ideas for how to help students recognize them and respond from a Christian perspective. We follow with a couple of examples teachers could discuss with their students.
Real quick, you mentioned the anti-faith perspective that was promoted in science books.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is correct, actually, when I'm thinking about it a little bit more, because I think what those textbooks are trying to say is don't confuse our science with any faith, because it does all the time. I think it's saying, look into science as science. Stop trying to dissuade yourself with fantasy ideals versus actual scientific proof and evidence and fact. So I think that's correct, because you shouldn't bring religion into science.
Well,
so
and then
I agree with that, actually.
Let's also, before you tell us what bias number 1 is, just let you all know that in these like right-wing evangelical homeschool societies, the whole concept is to keep their children from any secular thoughts and to control the narrative to such a degree that the kid never even hears the other side. And they'll even send like teenagers into into debates with each other for like debate club to debate evolution and creation. And it's like the person who's debating for evolution has no tools in which to arm themselves for this debate, because they've not been given any access to any of these concepts. So how on earth could they debate that? So guess who's always going to win? It's always going to be your creationist, your hardcore, like God created the world in 7 literal days type of thing. And when you make it like that, it's like you don't trust your kids to believe in what you think is right. You don't trust them at all. It is about brainwashing, controlling, and raising them to be these little parrots of you. Mm-hmm. Little parrot chirping on your shoulder. And I saw an instance of that at the stable yesterday, not in relation to homeschooling or religion, but it was about Trump. And I literally had to walk away. The farrier was talking to this dad and his daughter, who I think is probably in college. And the dad was basically talking about blue lives, and he had his phone, and he was like showing the farrier a picture. He was like, I almost put this bumper sticker on my car, but I'd get shot. And I thought to myself, hey buddy, you know what, I think you've got it all wrong. Isn't it those crazy leftist Democrats who are opposed to guns? They're most likely not going to have a gun to shoot you with. So I think your fears are very irrational here. But then he's like, can't post that on my car. Maybe I should put it on my wife's side of the car in case someone shoots. They're not going to shoot me. Literally, this is what I heard. And then they started talking about, he was telling the farrier, he was bragging about his daughter and how pro-Trump she is, and how all of her friends at school are kind of uncomfortable because she's got MAGA as her desktop screensaver on her computer, and she wears all of her Trump paraphernalia everywhere. And I thought to myself, I'm going to die and I need to leave right now. But his daughter was so proud, even though I guarantee you, she has not even considered anything alternative to the hate that her parents spew, because it puts her, she fits into this group. She fits in
and she gets rewarded for that stance. And I mean, it's easy to fall into that if you are seeking approval from your parents. I used to. I used to desperately seek approval, but then I realized that was worth nothing. And what they were saying was not true, and I would be a fool to just buy into it and parrot what they were saying, just to get them to say, oh yeah, Julia, look at you, so proud of you. Proud of me for what? fuck this.
I mean, it's not, I wouldn't call it a very proud moment of my life. All of the times I spent poring over my penmanship, writing Ken Hamm about how much his stories meant to me.
That's a learning curve, Kelley. We all are in an evolutionary phase of our lives, and you are a testament to that. So
Thanks.
I'd say be proud of yourself because you started someplace and you have been able to learn through your experiences.
Can I say though?
Can you what?
Can I say something that every evangelical Christian is going to probably, if they're not already in the grave, they will roll over in their grave when they are in their grave.
I think they're just having seizures right now. They've
uncontrollable
their ears
seizures.
Are bleeding, foaming at the mouth. They just are breaking down.
As I've been soaking up and like watching as many documentaries and learning about this amazing world and universe and science, and what the thing that comes to my mind is that fact is stranger and cooler than the fiction that we were raised to embrace.
Yes.
And it is so exciting. Like me watching stuff, even like that My Octopus teacher last night, I was like, this is insane. This is amazing. So
have you seen that? There's this video that I saw, and it was just of this fish that I'd never heard of before, and I never heard of its ritual before, and it was mind-blowing. I know it sounds silly, but it was mind-blowing to me. This fish, he picks this like space of sand of ocean floor, and he literally will suck up sand particles and spit it out to make these incredibly intricate designs from above. Like you look down and like all it does is it spends its time cleaning up his design constantly to leave it there, because that's how he attracts his mate. His mate comes by and sees his design and judges him by the intricacy and the cleanliness of its sand design. And I was just like mind blown.
What is this fish?
I'll have to send it to you. Like, I mean, I was like, what? And it's like beautiful. Like,
oh, Thomas said something while we were watching it, and I could be totally botching this, but what I believe he said was that humans are more closely related, I think he said,
to bananas,
biologically to fish, more so than a fish is related to like a lobster.
Interesting. But we also have a lot of DNA similar to bananas. Banana.
Okay, so
which is funny because the monkeys that we supposedly come from also like bananas. So maybe we eat, therefore we are.
What? Okay. All right, Julia, let's get back into this other mumbo jumbo. Tell us about bias number 1.
Bias number 1, science justifies scientism. One of the foundations of modern scientific inquiry is methodological. Okay. Kelley usually edits this out because words are hard for me, but now you see, raw and real. Let's really try this one, okay? I can read it in my mind.
You heard me reading out loud. I'm struggling with my mouth today.
You're just great. You have nothing to worry about.
Okay.
I cannot connect my brain with my mouth a lot of the time. So methodological.
Thank
you, Kelley. Methodological. I'm not smart. Naturalism. The idea that science studies the natural world, so supernatural causes are not considered as possible scientific explanations. This should not be confused with metaphysical naturalism, also called scientism, ontological naturalism, philosophical naturalism, or scientific materialism. A worldview that claims the natural world is all there is and there are no supernatural facts of reality. Some Christians mistakenly think that because the practice of science today usually involves methodological naturalism, all scientists are promoting metaphysical naturalism. Science is limited to natural explanations and therefore does not have the tools for determining the existence or non-existence of supernatural realities. But as Christians, we believe many supernatural truth claims on the basis of scripture, church tradition, and personal experience. Science and theology both generate knowledge and are complementary ways of finding out truth about reality. Recognizing this means we don't have to see the natural explanation science offers as diminishing or competing with the supernatural explanations offered by our faith. The explanations complement one another to form a more complete picture of reality. To combat a bias toward metaphysical naturalism helps students discern the difference between ruling out supernatural explanations in scientific study and ruling out the possibility of supernatural explanations in all areas of life. Point out when some scientists overstep the bounds and imply that science has proven they are correct in holding a metaphysical naturalism as a worldview.
Oh, they're trying so hard to tie it all together because they really don't want to be seen as that's separated from.
I don't like that I was saying all of that
hacks.
as if I was part of that.
Well, I'm about to do that as I tell you all about the dangerous bias number 2 from their perspective. Science and faith are at war. Some people promote the idea that science and Christian faith are inherently incompatible and at war with one another. If textbook writers subscribe to this view, or even if they are simply ignorant of the beliefs of religious people, they may present religion or people of faith as foils or enemies of science and scientists. They may imply that there is only one way to interpret certain passages of the Bible and that people must choose between what science says about the world and what they claim the Bible says about the world. They may present history as a battle between religious thinking and scientific thinking and claim scientific thinking eventually wins out and replaces religious thinking. Religious thinking may be presented as superstition, outdated tradition, or a way for corrupt religious authorities to maintain control over ignorant people. Scientific thinking, on the other hand, may be portrayed as a superior source of knowledge, since it is based on reason, empirical observations, proof, and evidence. When you see that faith and science are being treated as opposite forces or as opposing forces, point out that this is not the only way to see the relationship between faith and science. Give students opportunities to explore different ways in which science and faith can relate to one another. Help them see that the textbook writers who mischaracterize the beliefs of Christians may be ignorant about religion, but that doesn't mean we can or should discount what they say about science. This is a great moment for talking about the need for reading with discernment.
This is my turn, okay?
Yeah.
Bias number 3. Religion is an obstacle to scientific progress. That is correct. Let me read what they have to say about it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Sometimes secular textbooks seem to go out of their way to characterize religious beliefs, sacred texts, and Christian institutions as obstacles to scientific thinking. They may also ignore all the positive contributions to scientific progress that Christians have made and continue to make. Sorry, it's hard not to physically gag. There have been unfortunate occasions when religious people or authorities have resisted scientific advances, but if we fail to balance those stories with the stories of the many faithful Christian scientists who have pursued their investigations specifically because they were motivated by their faith, then we don't paint a balanced picture.
Aww.
The history of science is full of many devoted Christians and people from other faith traditions. I like how they're just like, we're inclusive. Who have seen no conflict between science and their faith, and in fact, have found them to be mutually edifying. Combat the idea that Christians stand in the way of progress by highlighting the devout faith of important scientists of the past like Boyle, Lemaitre, or Pasteur. Have students regularly read about believing scientists making meaningful contributions to their fields today? If you see news or pop culture references where scientists are stereotypically described as being atheists, talk about whether that is a fair portrayal of all scientists. With these strategies for addressing any bias you might encounter, you can confidently pick up a science textbook and focus your worries on the hard work of teaching the material. Below, no? What? You were about to say something?
I was just going to say we're not even going to read these guys. There's 2 examples that they list below of what they can do to practice detecting and discussing the problematic, biases of scientists and science. But basically, it's like they're really trying so hard to prep their kids to know exactly what to say.
And here's another argument
sad.
thing I've noticed is when people are like, well, if you are a scientist, how can you also have faith? And then they go like this. They go, the more I learn about science, the more impressed I am with God's artwork and ability to create. Oh, okay. My favorite is when somebody just went to college for science and they never practiced it and they never got a job in which they put it into practice of actively studying new things, and like they only do like a specific set of scientific, like a job that involves some element of science degree, but like they don't actually practice science and they want to act like they are a scientist. Mm-hmm. And I just want to tell them to shut the fuck up, because they are no scientists. Like, for instance, we have an in-law that went to school and studied biology, thinks that she's a scientist, still not employed. But she thinks climate change is a hoax, and she can say that because she was in science.
Oh.
I'm like,
wow.
You took biology. That doesn't make you a scientist.
I took biology as well. And let me tell you, everything I learned in that class was news to me. They're like, oh, we're just going to briefly recap what you guys already know about blank. And I was like, can we start at the beginning, please? So yeah, I was warned by, I think it was Mom when I first went to Western, to not listen to the lies being taught in my biology class. That is a true story.
Lies.
Oh. Anyway, past and present. So how were we raised to deny climate change? There is an article I found that kind of discusses where we were in relation to this growing up. So on theconversation.com, they have one that's called Faith and Politics Mixed Drive, Evangelical Christians' Climate Change Denial. U.S. Christians, especially evangelical Christians, identify as environmentalists at very low rates compared to the general population. According to a Pew Research Center poll from May 2020, while 62% of religiously unaffiliated U.S. adults agree that the earth is warming primarily due to human action, only 35% of U.S. Protestants do, including just 24% of white evangelical Protestants. Politically powerful Christian interest groups publicly dispute the climate science consensus. A coalition of major evangelical groups, including Focus on the Family and the Family Research Council, launched a movement opposing what they described as the false worldview of environmentalism, which supposedly is striving to put America and the world under its destructive control. Studies show, no, guys, that's what you're trying to do with religion. Don't get it twisted. Exactly. Studies show that belief in miracles and an afterlife is associated with lower estimates of the risks posed by climate change. So basically, because we're all going to be raptured away, or, the end of the world is going to come so quickly that we're not going to really need to worry about this world. This world is just a shell for us to discard and not care for. That's
Which
interesting.
also goes against the ideology from the beginning of where man is supposed to tend to the earth.
Yeah, that's what God tasked, or whatever, tasked Adam and Eve with, is caring for, naming all the animals, knowing what the animals were and what their purpose
Well, and
was.
if that's true, I have a further, more complex argument for you.
Okay.
Our bodies are but shells. So why should you be so worried about modesty in women's clothing?
Because you're made in God's image and your body is the temple, Julia.
Oh, but he also created the earth, so stop having you know what I mean? Like none of the arguments actually connect. They
Fairy
all
tales never make sense, Julia.
it's
Yeah.
like when you lie, you have to, Heather and I had a conversation about pathological liars the other day. It's like you create one lie and then you have to create another because you keep losing track of the first lie. And in order to keep backing yourself up, you have all of these lies to try to somehow keep this narrative that you started in place.
It's
And
got to be
then
so stressful.
it's
Like,
gotta be. And like that's why none of the arguments make sense, is because you just keep contradicting yourself, and it's like, just please stop. You're embarrassing
or just
yourself.
stick with one thing, maybe. And
Stick with one lie. It's easier to keep
yeah,
track of,
stick with the
but it's
one.
still but
Yeah.
like but wait, just don't lie though. Just like please just don't lie. Like
I keep swallowing yawns, guys. Sorry, I'm like
that's me, but with burps. So you've got yawns and I'm like
so going back to this, it says that studies show that belief in miracles and an afterlife is associated with lower estimates of risks posed by climate change. So this raises the question, does religion itself predispose people against climate science? Surveys of people around the world, as well as social science research on denial, suggest the answer to this question is more nuanced than a simple yes or no.
okay. Where religion and science can't be reconciled. An automatic resistance to science would seem to make sense for some religious believers. There are several ways that core aspects of modern scientific knowledge tend to undermine literalist or fundamentalist readings of religious texts. In particular, evolution by natural selection, the central concept underlying the biological sciences, is utterly incompatible with most creationist faith traditions. Religion offers the comforts of a measure of control and reassurance via an omnipotent deity that can be placated by ritual. Yeah, that's just religion in general, and it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
In contrast, the scientist naturalistic universe offers neither an intrinsic moral order nor a final reward, which can be unsettling for the devout and in conflict with their faith. Because it's uncomfortable when you've created this narrative that's supposed to really just kind of make you feel comfortable.
You know what makes me feel the most comfortable? Is there not being an afterlife? If you told me today that when I died, that's it, everything, nothing, it was just I would cease to exist. That sounds amazing. Like I don't need anything beyond that. That's the reassurance I want.
Once you're there, you don't know to care.
Yeah, once I'm dead, I'm not going to know. So please tell me it's nothing but dark, quiet oblivion.
Well, and I won't believe anything anyone says on afterlife because there is zero proof. And I mean,
Juliet, where's your faith?
Even if it means if someone's saying there's nothing. If there's an afterlife, okay. If there isn't, okay. I don't believe anything anyone says on the subject because there's zero proof. So I'm not even gonna. I don't see any reason to think about it.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Religion offers the comforts of a measure of control and Did I read that all?
Because of the mismatches.
I did. Thank you, Kelley.
Yeah.
This is also something that gets edited out a lot, you guys. I will either skip 2 lines down or reread something, and Kelley's like, no, sorry. Because of these mismatches, one might expect those with a strong religious affiliation to be reflexively suspicious of scientific findings. Indeed, in a large international survey, 64% of those who described religion as an important part of their life said they would side with their religious teachings in a disagreement between science and their religion. Other studies find that for the faithful, religion and science are at odds as ultimate explanations for natural phenomena. Kelley, it's like this kind of argument. It's like me being raised to believe I'm in a basement and I'm raised to believe the sky is purple. Sky's purple. Some reason I walk out and I see the sky someday and somebody's talking about this, the blue sky is so beautiful today. And I'm like, it's purple. And I'm going, no, you can literally see that it's blue. And me going, no, it's my faith to believe that the sky is purple.
It's what God said. God said the sky
said the sky was purple. What you're saying goes against my faith. So I will pretend that the color blue is now purple just for the sake of making my religious narrative work. That's like, I know that is, I super like simplified that, but that's basically how I view those kind of arguments, is like, it's so stupid.
Yeah. I mean, okay, we get it a yawn here.
Another one.
DJ
Khaled of yawns. Another one.
So climate science denial may stem more from politics than religion.
Yeah,
I disagree with this. I believe they go hand in hand.
Well, I see the aversion to climate change as people's view of politics versus just seeing it as science.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Lux, guys. She hears dogs barking downstairs.
Hi, Lex. So North America is the only high-income region where people who follow a religion are substantially more likely to say they favor their religious teachings over science when disagreements arise. This finding is driven mainly by politically conservative U.S. religious denominations, including conservative Catholics. A major new study looking at data from 60 countries showed that while religiosity in the U.S. is correlated with more negative attitudes about science, you don't see this kind of association in many other countries. Elsewhere, religiosity is sometimes even correlated with disproportionately positive attitudes about science, which is interesting. But the available evidence cuts both ways. A landmark study from the 80s suggested that the fundamentalist religious traditions are associated with a commitment to human dominion over nature, and that its attitude may explain anti-environmentalist positions.
Yeah, that's another thought. I can see that.
But the thing is, you know, if you want to go back to Genesis and you want to, I mean, he said to care and to care for the animals and the creatures and the world or the earth, like he made them stewards. They were these stewards.
But I see where that plays into how people view it today. Because it's the same thing with like people who largely look down at vegetarians or vegans, because they think that they like the argument of, well, that's just the cycle of life, and man is basically is supposed to reap and reap.
I just see it as another extension of manifest destiny, that belief that we deserve to own everything that we see and desire.
Right, because we are at the top of the food chain, so we must
get rid of the savages, take their land. How dare they exist? I mean,
little do they know they are the savages.
So even after controlling for a political ideology, those committed to an end times theology, like U.S. evangelicals, still show a greater tendency to oppose the scientific consensus on environmental issues. Perhaps some specific theologies bias the believer against the idea that human beings could be responsible for the end of humanity. This bias could show up as an automatic rejection of environmental science.
We are left with something of a chicken and egg problem. Do certain religious communities adopt politically conservative positions on climate change because of their religious tradition? Or do people adopt a religious tradition that stresses human dominion over nature because they were raised in a politically conservative community? That's a good one. The direction of causation here may be difficult to resolve. It wouldn't be surprising to find either religious dogmatism or political conservatism linked with anti-science attitudes. Each tends to favor the status quo. Fundamentalist religious traditions are defined by their fixed doctrines. Political conservatives, by definition, favor the preservation of the traditional social and economic order.
And Juliet, just for expediency, I'm going to have us skip this this next one about the creation care cause. Essentially, guys, what we were going to go into is what happens when Christians believe climate change and want to help. There was an evangelical, or not, no, there was a Christian creation care cause that was brought about by Christians who embrace, like, you know, these facts about climate change, and they were like trying to come at it from a scriptural point of view, based around stewardship of the earth. But they were definitely shut down very quickly. We'll include it on the site. Please look for it. It's super interesting. It was made extremely, it was just shut down by the evangelical right and by some politicians like Mike Huckabee. So just look at that on our summary of this. It's pretty in-depth, and basically it's the only one of its kind that I've found, and it was not successful. We are going to sum it up by discussing the war between science and religion. This was kind of my current view. This article really puts it into perspective. I don't know about you, Julia. You can tell me what you agree with or disagree with about this. But essentially, he says that, and we'll have all this on the site to where you can read these articles.
Where are you at?
I'm at down where the highlighter says war between science and religion.
Gotcha.
So as the West becomes more and more secular and the discoveries of evolutionary biology and cosmology shrink the boundaries of faith, the claims that science and religion are compatible grow louder. If you're a believer who doesn't want to seem anti-science, what can you do? You must argue that your faith, or any faith, is perfectly compatible with science, which someone I spoke to was attempting to do last week, and it made me insane. It made me feel like I was going insane. And so one sees claim after claim from believers, religious scientists, prestigious science organizations, and even atheists, asserting not only that science and religion are compatible, but also that they can actually help each other. This claim is called accommodation. And the author here argues that this is misguided, that science and religion are not only in conflict, even at war, but also represent incompatible ways of viewing the world. This is where I am in my present life, in my views on this.
Yeah, I agree.
Lux, hush.
So I think Cousin Rachel's over and the dogs downstairs are losing their shit, and Lux is just hearing them from upstairs and is like, what's going on?
I hear it. It's a commotion.
You can hear it?
Yeah, I can.
Oh my God.
I can hear that
Okay.
Casper. I can hear Casper.
Yes. Yeah, Hunter really doesn't make a lot of noise. His biggest thing is like, ooh. Anyway. All right, my argument runs like this. I'll construe science as a set of tools we use to find truth about the universe, with the understanding that these truths are provisional rather than absolute. These tools include observing nature, framing and testing hypotheses, trying your hardest to prove that your hypothesis is wrong to test your confidence that it's right, doing experiments, and above all, replicating your and others' results to increase confidence in your inference. And I'll define religion as does philosopher Daniel Dennett. Social systems whose participants avow belief in a supernatural agent or agents whose approval is to be sought. Of course, many religions don't fit that definition, but the ones whose compatibility with science is touted most often, the Abrahamic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, fill the bill. And yet, without supporting evidence, Americans believe a number of religious claims. 74% of us believe in God. That's crazy. 68% in the divinity of Jesus, 68% in heaven, 57% in the virgin birth. How? How? Oh, Lord. And 58% in the devil and hell. Why do they think these are true? Faith.
now Ari is
how
digging.
can so many people be duped that there was that there was a virgin birth?
I don't know, Julia. But he also says different religions make different and often conflicting claims, and there's no way to judge which claims are right. There are over 4,000 religions on this planet, and their truths are quite different. Muslims and Jews, for instance, absolutely reject the Christian belief that Jesus was the Son of God. Indeed, new sects often arise when some believers reject what others see as true. Lutherans split over the truth of evolution, while Unitarians rejected other Protestants' belief that Jesus was part of God. And while science has had success after success in understanding the universe, the method of using faith has led to no proof of the divine. How many gods are there? What are their natures and moral creeds? Is there an afterlife? Why is there moral and physical evil? There is no one answer to any of these questions. All is mystery, for all rests on faith. So how do the faithful reconcile science and religion? Often they point to the existence of religious scientists, like NIH director Francis Collins, who someone I spoke with last week was referencing, or to the many religious people who accept science. But I'd argue that this is compartmentalization, not compatibility, for how can you reject the divine in your laboratory, but accept that the wine you sip on Sunday is the blood of Jesus? Whoa!
You know, it's funny to me, like, when you talk about how they try to use science to back up their religious claims or the Bible claims. It'll be silly stuff that could just be purely historical, because elements of the Bible are historical. It doesn't mean that they are literal. It doesn't mean that, I mean, most of the Bible is built off of parables that get confused with literal instances. Like, for instance, Jesus, and there are books that are left out of the Bible, and I just discovered a couple months ago that there was a book left out of the Bible that talked about Jesus's sins, because the Bible likes to emphasize that Jesus was a son of God and pure and sin-free. But there was a book of the Bible that was purposefully left out that talks about Jesus as a man who has sins. And that was cut out, so because it didn't fit the narrative that they wanted. So I mean
they even had that section where Jesus he was being tested by Satan.
In the desert.
But the whole point of that was that Jesus was in human form. He was here on earth walking as man. And, he was being put to this test to see if he passed. And if he was purely there as a divine being, then that would have been no big deal, no big test to him. But it was, I think, his humanity, his embodiment of a human being that was struggling with that. But then again, I'm struggling to wrap my brain around it because fairy tales are fairy tales.
Exactly. It's like trying to make Grimm's fairy tales make sense in real life, like, and try to scientifically prove them. That's funny. Anyway, so the thing with the proof. So, like, they'll prove where Jesus's tomb, like, they'll have historical elements that are kept sacred in Israel and Jerusalem, and they'll just basically be artifacts that you can't tie it to an exact thing, because all of the artifacts were so basic back then, because the lack of uniqueness and stuff. Like today, like, well, we have all these little devices that define different eras that we go through. In that era, like, there's no real proof of Jesus. So, but they cling to everything. Like, they'll be like, this is the tomb where he was kept. How do you know?
Were you there?
Were you there? Anyway, so yeah, but like they cling to stuff like that, and I have a reverence for history. I have in a sense where like in artifacts, like I have a respect for like that represents a time period that we need to learn more about, and that's fascinating. But I don't respect everybody's constant attempt at connecting it to Christianity's version of events.
One last thing, you guys, that I'm going to say is that in a conversation with a parent a couple of years ago, I was in the hospital. You know, it was like when I had my kidney infection and it was really bad and I had sepsis and thought I was going to die. I spoke with someone on the phone and it turned to, I just read this really interesting article and it said that by these Christian scientists that they found physical proof that there were only, that there were only two people that were responsible for all life in the world. And I took this moment to throw a little wrench in their ideology by not combating what they were saying, but saying, oh, that's fantastic. Now that we finally have proof we all came from the same two individuals, that means race is not a thing. Racism can just disappear because there's no point for it. So you can stop being racist. And that didn't go over well. I was like, and we can all just accept that we are all equal and the same. I was like, you just made my whole day. The silence, the heavy silence that followed that was beyond satisfying to a level that I just was like, oh, kumbaya, kumbaya. So, at this point, I'm trying really hard not to argue with people in my life who are not just carrying on beliefs that are flawed, but are purposefully perpetrating these lies, not only upon themselves, but upon their children, because they hate the concept or the idea that the world doesn't mean that they matter the most.
Right. And something that has bothered me, even when like I was trying to pretend I accepted the narrative, which I've never believed this. I have really tried to, because I was seeking approval so badly, and I thought that it was the only way, because and then I felt guilty for not believing. The guilt was like so impressed upon me, and I tried so hard to believe, and I was always asking God to talk to me, because I was like, please let me know,
Tell me something, anything.
And then I'd question my belief, my lack of belief because I'd be like, I can't hear you, I probably, something's wrong. Do I actually believe? And no, I didn't, because
I did the same thing to myself all the time, giving God little tiny challenges and little opportunities to prove that I was on the right path, but I stayed on that wrong path for most of my life. And I've been catching up ever since. But
the biggest thing that showed me, and it wasn't secular influence. For me, they're so scared of secular influence and other ideologies' influence to scare you away from believing, but they scare people away on their own. Mm-hmm. What influenced me was not other opinions, because I really wasn't allowed to be privy to that. What influenced me was just like literally observing the way that it was given to me, the information was given to me, and the arguments presented. It was just realizing that they don't care about fact, and whenever it comes to like science or politics or anything, their standpoint is the same. They always research for things that promote the narrative that they've established. Even if it's untrue, They like it because it supports it and it makes them more comfortable, and they don't even care about the truth, because if the truth challenges what they've been raised, they feel threatened. They feel like their belief system is shattered. So to keep it up, they have to like search out other people that promote the same message in higher places of power, whether it be in politics. That's why they love it in politics, because it perpetuates this thing that they've raised themselves on. Because if they don't have that, they don't feel like they matter, and they don't feel any comfort, and they're scared to die. And I feel like the other thing about religion and heaven and hell and all this other stuff is it gives people this absolute comfort of knowing what happens, because everybody just has this fear of being like having no control. And this religion gives them that element of control, which gives them a sense of comfort. And even if they know it's wrong, as long as they search out and they don't like do real scientific tests or have real arguments, they only like angle it a certain way so they always get the answer they want. And it's not because they're actually researching it, it's because they just want to further promote and instill their belief system.
Yeah. Well, just a side note there. The idea of an afterlife, or even the idea of having to, of even reincarnation, sounds awful to me. I'm already tired. I'm not even that old. I know it looks like I'm ancient,
but you don't, stop it.
But I'm just so tired. Like, I can't imagine having to either come back and live another life. I'm like, no, but I don't want to do it. No. So this is the summary of our first installment into Science versus Faith. Thank you, Julia, for having this discussion with me. We're going to wrap up, but we're going to also beg of you to give us some stars. 5 stars, please.
5.
5, not 1, like I said last week.
If not 5, don't at all.
Well, I mean, 4 to 5, guys.
Nope. 5.
Well, please send any and all complaints to Julia Avery 90. What is your email?
92, my birth year.
Julia, is it dot? Julia.Avery?
Yes.
Julia.Avery92@gmail.com. Please send any and all complaints to her, and then any good news or accolades, please send to Kelley.Richie@87@gmail.com.
If we get any complaints or critiques, you know how they have mean tweets on like Jimmy Kimmel and stuff? Mm-hmm. It's hilarious. We will have a new segment every episode where we'll read one of those in
So if you say something like, "You guys suck," we're going to laugh and we're going to read it out loud.
It's hilarious. I will wear it as a badge of honor. So thank you.
Thank you guys for listening. No matter what your opinion is, I'm sure this particular episode might ruffle some feathers, current or prehistoric feathers. So let's...
But I want to ask you, if it does ruffle your feathers, really challenge yourself before you say anything. Challenge your inner self on why this bothers you.
Yeah. And Julia, where can they find us other than sending complaints to julia.avery92@gmail.com?
You can find us at our website, www.thefamilytiespodcast.com. We have links to the sources that we quote from, because we don't like to talk out of our ass. So yes, we repeat what others say that have done the studies, because we are not going to pretend like we're experts. We just are very fascinated on the subjects and want to talk about it, but don't want to talk out of our ass. So
yeah, research. All right, guys, it has been lovely speaking with you. Julia, I love you. I love you guys.
I love you too.
Join the family. Bye. Yes.